Hi, I'm John Riley. Welcome to another episode of Bushcraft Bums. I'm going to talk about a couple of ways just to utilize your belt knife to make it a more efficient tool. Alright? Before I get into that, I'm going to give a little introduction to what I think are some good qualifications of a belt knife. One is I like a nice good carbon steel blade. This is 1095, but any good carbon tool steel, A2, 01, 1095, all adequate steels. There are a lot of good stainlesses out there too, but I don't really deal too much with that. Also, I like it to have a full tang, which means that the blade goes all the way through to the handle in one solid piece of steel. Alright, I like a spear point because it makes it useful for drilling. And I like about a 4-inch blade with what's called a single bevel or Scandinavian grind, and what that means is that the blade just slopes down into one angle. There's not a secondary bevel, it's one solid bevel, and it makes that really good for dealing with wood and woodcraft type activity. Alright, so I'm going to go in a couple of different ways of how to use your knife here to get the most out of it. Alright, one way, which is pretty controversial among some people in the survival or bushcraft community, is called battoning. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm in between about it. I think there are times when it's really useful, like when I'm trying to make a fireboard out of a solid piece of wood, a round piece of wood. I think battoning is a useful skill. If it's wet out and you need to get some dry tinder from inside of or some dry kindling from inside of a solid piece of wet wood, you can split it open to do that. So what I'm going to show you is how to do that. And I have here a pretty relatively thick piece of wood. Alright, I'm going to just pop my knife right in the middle there so you can see. I'm going to get a nice solid baton here. Let me get that ready. Alright, just like that. And what I'm going to do is my main thing I want to do is I'm going to start hammering the knife in with another piece of wood into this wood to split it. I don't want the knife to really go too far that way or too far that way, because then it shifts the fulcrum on this lever and it makes it puts undue stress on certain parts of the knife. So I want to try and keep that as straight as I can. It will inevitably move from one side to the other, and then I just try to move it back. Alright, so I'm just going to hammer this in. And I get myself two nice small pieces of wood, and then I can continue doing this as I need to get smaller pieces of wood. Alright, get a couple of small pieces of wood going on here for some kindling maybe. Alright. Actually, it's pretty wet out here. I'm actually hammering this into the log there. Split it this way, maybe. There we go. We get some pretty thin pieces of wood there, right? And then we can continue to utilize these to get some drier wood by making feather sticks or whatever, cutting some fuzzies in them. Alright, just for example of what you might do. Alright, that's one thing. The next thing is called truncating. And what truncating is when you have a round piece of wood and you want to cut it when you don't have a saw. That's going to be done in a very similar way. Alright, I'm just going to hold this wood flat. I'm going to place the knife across the grain this way, and I'm going to hammer it through. Alright, you get a fairly clean cut. It sometimes breaks at the very end. This piece is kind of brittle. This is a piece of brittle evergreen. But I'm going to hammer it through. One thing when you're truncating or splitting wood this way is there's a danger as if you keep your knife too straight, as you hammer down you might pin your knuckles between the handle of the knife and the stump. You always want to block when you're doing any kind of splitting with your knife. You always want to block under your blade so that you don't hit a rock and chip your blade. So a nice block of wood is good for that. Alright, and be careful of your knuckles, like I said. We're going to truncate. We're going to start hammering this through. Find a little solider piece of log there. That feels a little better. And we hammer that through. And, you know, it got pretty clean up to a point. I don't know if you can see it. Ended up splitting off at the end there. But I started off with a nice clean cut. Probably hit a knot, and actually I can see I definitely hit a knot in there. You can see there's a knot underneath right where it clicked in there. So that's why that broke off. But you do start off getting a nice clean cut to a piece of wood. It's another way to split wood like that. Alright? Another way that I like to play with carving, you've probably seen it if you've seen any of my videos, is that I like to lock my knife arm out and then pull the wood against the knife using the muscles in my back. This feels like a really good, you can see I'm getting some pretty decent curls on here, which is always a good thing. You know, when you're thinking about fire starting, right? You're always cutting the different angles to keep getting those curls, right? That's always a nice thing to do. Alright, just for example, I'm just not really trying to make fuzzies here. I'm just making, for example, of seeing how to utilize this carving method of pulling the wood against the knife and seeing how much control you can get, which is actually pretty neat. And I got some decent fuzzies there. They'll probably light right up with a match. But also, this keeps the knife from flying around. If I was just carving with my hand only, the knife is much more erratic. This way, the knife is locked and the wood is moving. You know, it's good for peeling off large sections of bark if you were trying to clean off something, you know, right? Like that. Okay, it's also good like if I had a thinner piece of wood maybe and I wanted to put a point on it, I'll just start off in here. Same thing. I just start rotating the wood as I'm pulling against my arm, and you can see already it's starting to develop a little point on there, just like that. This is pine too, so give me a nice smell. But those are a couple of different methods of carving. Another method I've seen a lot of guys use, I haven't used this one too extensively myself, is when they'll lock a piece of wood down and then bend their body instead of pulling the wood against them. Alright, some guys are really good at this. This is something I'm not really, I feel like I have much better control doing it the way that I showed earlier, where I pull the wood against me rather than rocking them. I feel like I'm almost applying too much force this way from my body. Like that. I feel like I don't get a lot of real control that way. Alright, and one more thing I wanted to demonstrate is one of my favorite techniques, which is called that's something I just started playing with not too long ago, and I really kind of like it a lot. It's called the chest lever method. So what I'm going to do there is lock my, having the blade right in a line with my knuckles. I'm just going to take a quick look at the time here. Alright, doing good. Got the blade in line with my knuckles there, so I'm kind of taking the knife in a different grip, and I'm keeping everything nice and tight against my chest. And what I'm using now is the strength of my back muscles, the rhomboid muscles in my back, and expanding my chest to give me the force of the cut. And this allows me to take large chunks of wood off with relatively little effort. You know, just take huge gaping shavings off without too much effort. It's a good way too if you have wood with some knots in it. You want to get rid of some knots. It's a really good way to do it. You get rid of large chunks of wood all at once. I don't know if I have anything with a significant knot in here. Maybe like a little knot like this. Just comes right off, right? Comes off again. I'm just cutting little stubs and knots right off the wood there. And I got one here. This one looks a little big. I have to do it a couple of times. But you see, you know, you just really get a lot of power this way. It's also called the power grip, chest lever grip. And you're really just expanding your back muscles. Get a lot of force on that, and I like that a lot for taking off anything when you want to take off large pieces of wood in one sitting. It's really handy. Alright, so we went over battoning, truncating, I don't know what you call it, but just when you keep your knife hand straight and pull the wood against using your back muscles. We also went over a chest lever grip, and those are some of the grips that I use a lot. Probably the most of anything else, different techniques for carving. We'll do more later on where we show how to carve hooks into things and notches and such, but I'm going to deal mostly with that for today. Alright, so thanks for watching. I hope that was helpful. If anyone has any questions or any comments or additional techniques that they'd like to tack on or show me, I'd always be happy to learn new stuff, because that's, you know, I'm still learning, and I'm always trying to take that further. Alright, John Riley, thanks for watching.